Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and to my side is my friend, my muted friend, Tommy Highway. Tommy, introduce yourself and tell a little bit about our channel.
Hey folks, I'm Tommy Highway, and I want to thank everybody for coming out. Really appreciate it. Got a great guest tonight. I'm going to go ahead and just tell you a little bit about our channel, because our mission here at the UFO Man channel is to bring about disclosure through investigations and collaborations with other ufologists, and of course you, the people that are witnessing these unexplained phenomena. Our channel is dedicated to reviewing data and sightings from all over the world of unexplained phenomena, including video and eyewitness accounts. Each week we post videos that were submitted to us by the public or provided to us by other reliable resources. These videos are put through a process to either authenticate or debunk each sighting whenever possible. We at the UFO Man channel believe that the truth really is out there, and that each of us possess a very small piece to a very large puzzle. The more of these small pieces that we can connect gets us that much closer to our ultimate goal of full and complete disclosure. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. Can you please introduce our featured guest of the evening?
I would be very happy to. Tim, folks, we have a great guest with us tonight. His name is Bruce Solheim, and he's an author, a paranormal researcher, a psychic medium, a ufologist. We want to go ahead and welcome Dr. Bruce Olav Solheim. Bruce?
Hey, guys. Great to see you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, okay, we got... our first question of the evening for you is, in your own words, Bruce, can you tell us what the catalyst was to get you into your current subject matter? What was the driving force behind what you study and what you present?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I can start by saying I've just had a paranormal life since age 4. When I had my first paranormal experience, age 6, or my first experience at age 4 was an angelic healing experience where the doors opened for me. My mom was very psychic, so she, kind of helped the process. Age 6, I had my first contact with an alien being, and I had 3 other abduction reunion experiences, and I was always interested, but I could never really, I could discuss things with my mother, but I found that discussing these things with other people, it didn't really help me too much. And then when I went into the Army, that's not really a place. I was a jail guard, and then I was a pilot. That wasn't a good place to be talking about the paranormal and my UFO alien experiences. And I did take a parapsychology class while I was stationed in West Germany, and I was fascinated by it, and I've always been reading and doing the research. But I ended up getting my degree in history, which is what I do. I teach U.S. history, but I also teach a paranormal course, which includes, UFO and alien studies in the evening for the, kind of like a night school. We haven't done it in the last year or so, but anyway, so I've always been interested in it, and it wasn't until 2016 that I really started to my friend Gene came to me in a vision after he died, and told me that it was time to tell my stories. I hadn't really been able to do that. I'd kept it kind of hidden, and he told me it was time. He even gave me the name of the book, that he should be called Timeless, because there is no sense of time in where he's at, which is the spirit world. So I wrote Timeless, and then Timeless Deja Vu, and then Timeless Trinity. And I was afraid to tell these stories because I was afraid I'd lose my job as a professor. I'd lose my tenure. Students would laugh at me, and professors would my fellow colleagues would abandon me, but none of that stuff happened. Like I said, they even now allow me to teach a paranormal class. So that just shows you how things have changed over time. I really didn't have anything to be afraid of. So, so after those 3 books, 89 different experiences, including alien experiences, I wrote the book Anzar. That's my latest book. And that's by far the one that required the most research. It's over 400 pages. About half of it is the research I've done on my theory of what I call the quantum nexus, which is that the spirit world, alien world, and spirit world, alien world, and the quantum physics world are all really the same thing. And that's how everything operates. So I spend half the book doing that, heavily footnoted, Then the other half is just all my transcripts of all the spirit walks I've taken and connections I've had with Anzar, this ancient alien mystic. And so it's a pretty cool book. So there's something for everybody. For pure research people, they can go through that part of it. For people that just want to hear what does Anzar have to say, they can go right to that part of the book. And if they want to cut to the very end of it, where I list the 45 most profound things that he's told me and the predictions that he's made that have come true as well, that's at the end of the book. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. And anyway, that's how I got into it. It's like I started my Timeless book. The first line in my first Timeless book was, "It's not that I believe in ghosts, it's that they believe in me, so I have no choice." I didn't ask for it. It just happened to me at a young age, and it's been with me the whole time.
How did you make the jump, so to speak, from paranormal world to ufology?
Well, I know the two worlds are somewhat separated, and I actually did a paper. I wrote a research paper for MUFON about that. Is ufology and paranormal, are UFOs and aliens actually paranormal? So my answer to that is based on my theory that yes, it's all part of the same realm. The UFO, the aliens, and the spirit world and the quantum world are all operating in the same realm. So that's kind of a short answer to that. I had alien experiences, like I said, at age 6 in 1964, again in 1973. 1977, 1978, and then in 1997, and then continuously since 2018. So the last 3 years, I've been in contact with Anzar. So I've had everything from healing experiences, angelic stuff, demonic stuff, ghosts, apparitions, cryptids, telekinesis or psychokinesis. And telepathy, mediumship. I've had all this stuff happen to me. I'm kind of like a paranormal lightning rod. So that's what's been happening. And like I said, I didn't choose it; it chose me, and for whatever reason. And I'm not afraid to talk about it anymore, obviously. But it's I realize that there are people in the UFO world who don't want to really deal with the ghosts and stuff, and there's people in that world, the ghosts and that stuff that don't want to deal with UFOs. But to me, it's all really the same.
They're connected.
The same part. Yeah, it's a package deal. It really is the way I see it anyway.
Right. We've actually talked about that recently. That there is an interdimensional vibration or frequency where you step from one reality to the next, and in those two realities is how these ships are popping in and popping out. So it's very likely that is the case. Tommy, you want to ask your second question?
Absolutely, Bruce. Again, thank you for being here, sir. Very interesting. We understand that you're going to be part of Contact in the Desert this year, and we just wanted to ask you what exactly that you'll be doing at the event.
Yeah, I have a lecture I'm going to give. It's called "We Are Messengers." How a former Fulbright professor came to channel an ancient alien mystic. So that's supposed to gain, some kind of attention from people. How did that happen? And that's what my presentation will be about. I lay it out from when my first contact throughout my life, a little bit of my theory and background story, who Anzar is in depth, and what he has said, what he's taught me, and really where we're going from here, which is really probably the most interesting thing. People always want to know what is he saying about the future. And so that's what my lecture covers. I guess it's more of I guess it is officially a lecture, but anyway, and then I'll also be part of a panel discussion too with some of the the luminaries in ufology. including my friend Terry Lovelace and Whitley Strieber and the journalist for the New York Times, Ralph Blumenthal, who I think was on your show recently.
Yes.
And so, these luminaries, these people, I don't know how I ended up on that panel, but I was lucky enough to talk with all of them or be talking with them. And so I'll be doing that as well. I think that's all I'm doing for Contact in the Desert, but there's so many interesting people. And the great, even though it's not in person this year, which is, I know for a lot of people, that's a bummer. The good news about that is you don't have to choose at 9 o'clock who are you going to listen to, because they're always in different locations. So this time you can listen to everybody because it's because it's virtual. So, and they'll record it, and you can, if you buy the pass, and you can listen to everything or watch everything.
It's really cool this year that it's virtual, because that has allowed us to participate in the conference as well. Mm-hmm. Tommy and I will be featured in the host window with your interview and several other ones, and in Cosmic Cafe. So we're also there. And also at the beginning of each Cosmic Cafe, I think 2 videos from my channel on each Cosmic Cafe will be featured of UFO sightings. So, and these are from actual people on the street, the common man and woman. So when we put them out, they're not military or government sightings. These are actual people in their backyard with their cell phones.
Right. That's
so great. We're going to put those out, and some people filming from airplane windows and everything that you can think of. But we got some good content.
Oh, great.
But Bruce, I want you to elaborate a little bit more about Anzar and your book Anzar. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've heard from Anzar in regards to what's going on right now in regards to the UFO report and the UFO situation in America?
Yeah, he has a lot to say. First, I'll just tell you a little bit, who he is, and just give you a kind of a backgrounder on him for your audience. He's an ancient alien mystic. He's called Anzar the progenitor meaning the first. He says that he is the first contact for us here on this planet, which makes him pretty darn important. Why he picked me, I'm not exactly sure. I've asked him that. I don't feel like I'm super special, other than the fact that I've had a lifetime of paranormal experiences, and it's very easy to contact me. Maybe it might be as simple as that. But he said that we are related, and he not only says we are related, but that we are all related. In fact, he's told me that we are the aliens, that we are, as the Native Americans say, the star brothers and star sisters. This idea that we are all together. And so my first contact with him, as it turns out, was the first alien contact I had, as far as I know, in 1964, and it was a rescue. He helped me avoid a very terrible situation. I don't know if I should go into all the details of it. I can do that later. But in 1997 is when he told me he was the progenitor. Because before that, when I had that experience in 64, I was only 6 years old. I didn't understand the significance other than I thought he was a monster. What did I know? And I was so traumatized, even though I was rescued at that time from a very evil neighbor, as it turned out. I was traumatized so badly that I couldn't speak for 2 years. I had to go into speech therapy for like 2 hours a day until I could speak again. I was stammering and stuttering so badly that I couldn't communicate. So it took 2 years to overcome that. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a small price to pay for having been rescued from a horrible individual in our neighborhood. But I didn't know who he was. He didn't announce his name or anything. In 97, he came to me in a vision, just like I talked about this vision with my friend Gene, who got this whole thing started for me as far as telling my stories. He came to me in 97, told me he was the progenitor, and told me that he was the first contact, and that he has been basically giving us nudges along the way, which is, I'll lead up to actually the nudge that he's giving us right now. But shortly after that, I didn't tell anybody. I wrote it down. I drew a picture of him, And it wasn't until 2001 that I tried to approach one of my colleagues at the college. And I figured she'd be cool with it because she was an anthropologist and she studied ancient cultures and religions and, shamanism and stuff. Okay, she'll dig it. She'll understand. I told her what had happened. I showed her the drawing and she just looked at me and said, "You're a pretty spacey dude, aren't you?" So then I realized, okay, maybe this isn't going to go so well. So I just didn't say anything. And then it wasn't until 2016 when Gene came to me in that vision that I overcame my fear and he gave me a push to start telling these stories. Since 2018, on my spirit walks that I do 3 or 4 times a week, which are meditative walks that I take, I connect to the spirit world, the alien world, the quantum world. And I've been talking to him for during the last 3 years. I contact him every single time, among others that I contact as well, other entities. And I've transcribed all of that. I record it on my phone. It's not like I'm recording their voice. I hear it and I say what they're saying into my voice recorder in the phone. And then I come home and I transcribe it. So I have over 300 pages of transcribed communications with spirits, mostly with Anzar. And that's what I turned into the book. At least the second half of the book was all that stuff that he told me. And he's given me prophecies, predictions, preparations. And yeah, that's one of the ways he looks. He's a little bit scary looking, but then again, life is scary. And, like I said, back in 64, that's the first thing I told him. I said, why should I believe you? You look like a monster. And he said, I'm not the monster. He said, that neighbor of yours, that evil man, is the monster. You can't go by how people look. And so that was one of the first lessons I learned from him. But anyway, so he has been instructing me this whole time. He's given me so much information. One of the things he says every single time is to always keep love in my heart and operate from a position of love. Now that sounds kind of maybe a little corny coming from an alien, but when you think about it, it's what's helped me and what helps us survive. This idea that, and that doesn't mean you can't have tough love, because that is also a part of that. But it's gotten me out of a lot of bad situations and helped me kind of weather through all the turmoil that's going on. Because as a college professor, I have to be very even-handed with all my students. I can't be taking sides and preaching to them or whatever. So it's been a very important thing. And the other thing that he says related to disclosure, which you were talking about, is that, and I'll just read it right so I get his words right. He said, extraterrestrial technology and wisdom are precious gifts for all, not a strategic advantage for the few. So he made that very clear in his communication with me. And I really believe that to be true. He's told me that there's a tendency for our government, not just our government, other governments to, and I've talked to people that are part of the intelligence community. They say the same thing unofficially, that all these governments are scrambling to figure out a way to strap a bomb to this technology. Wouldn't that be the ultimate weapon system? Right. And he said that's not going to happen. They're not going to allow that to happen. It's not allowed to be used to hurt people, hurt other people or entities or whatever. And that's not what it's about. So that's a little bit about, kind of the background and where we are now. And as far as the future goes, I can get into that, but maybe you had another question there. I don't know.
Tommy?
Well, it's very interesting. Actually, I was very interested in the abduction experience that you and your friend had. I was hoping maybe you could just kind of tell us about that.
Yeah, I've had several. Well, in 73, I had one. In 77 and 78. The one in 77 was interesting because it involves two people. Me and my friend, I call him Ernie. I had to change his name, and I'll explain why. What happened was that we were on a road trip. We lived in Seattle. That's where I grew up. We were going to drive to Salt Lake City. Then we're going to go to Las Vegas and then LA and then up the coast, San Francisco and back to Seattle. That was our road trip. And we were both 18 years old and we were going to have a blast, right? Well, the first night we got a kind of a late start. We got into Idaho And it was dark. It was really dark, and we were getting tired, so we needed to pull over, but we didn't have enough money. We couldn't stay in a hotel. Let's stay in a campground. So we pulled off on a place called Black Pine Peak in the wilderness of Idaho. I mean, what a perfect name for a scary thing to happen, right? So we pull off the road, this dirt road. We can't find the campground. Finally, we give up. There's a clearing, and we just pull over to the side of the dirt road in this clearing. And we were too tired to put up a tent. It was too dark, so we just put our sleeping bags over us in the car. And right away, stuff started to happen. Now, I remember, these are conscious memories that I have. I remember there was people or entities, things outside of the car. I didn't know what they were, but they were outside. There was something outside of the car. There were also weird lights. And at first I thought they were like other cars that were approaching us, but it wouldn't make any sense because they'd be coming at us through the clearing, which wouldn't make sense. Plus they were at a higher angle and coming from different directions and kind of moving. It didn't make any sense at all. And the other thing I remember is that I felt like I was frozen or paralyzed. I couldn't move. And I remember the sound, like these mechanical sounds, and then I remember a smell, and that was very clear to me. That's one of the most powerful memories I have, is this kind of ion smell, like it's just about to rain, that kind of a smell. And so I knew that something had happened, and I decided to do a hypnotic regression and to, kind of fill it in. And one of the and Yvonne Smith did my hypnotic regression. She's a pretty well-known regressionist. Anyway, so the first thing she did was say, okay, you're back in that car. Can you see these entities or these things around the car? And I said, yeah, they're not humans. They look alien to me. They're grays. Some short, some tall, and these lights are obviously some kind of spacecraft or something. And she said, you said you were paralyzed? And I said, yeah, I'm paralyzed. She said, but can you turn and look into the passenger seat where Ernie should have been, right? And she said, what do you see? And I looked there as I'm in this hypnotic state. And I said, he's gone. Ernie's gone. Where is Ernie? And so that really freaked me out. And so I wanted to share this with Ernie. So after I'd gone through this, regression, to me, it told me, hey, this was an alien contact, and he was abducted. So I called up my friend Ernie. I hadn't talked to him in a number of years, but every once in a while we get in touch. But I called him and I said, hey, I'm writing this story. I'm writing this book, and I want to write about this experience. Do you remember what happened in 1977? He's, oh yeah, I remember. And then he went through the same conscious memories I had, somebody around the car, he felt drugged or he felt paralyzed, the weird lights, the sounds, the smell. He remembered all that stuff. And I said, well, Ernie, I think you were abducted. I had this regression. I think you were abducted. And he got so mad at me. I couldn't tell you how it went from friendly to just, hostile, just in a split second. And he said, if you would have told me that right away, I would have hung up the phone. I feel like you tricked me into this, and I don't want my name used in the book. There's no way you're going to, drag me into this. And I said, I'm sorry that, you feel that way. And I said, I feel bad that somehow, you were taken and I wasn't. He said, well, you should feel bad because you tricked me into talking about this. And then he hung up, and I kept trying to call him and trying to email him. And finally he emailed me back, oddly, about a week later. And he said, you know what? I do remember something else. And he said, I remember that I was taken, and I was abducted. And the reason you feel bad is because you allowed your best friend to be taken. And he said, I remember what they told me. They said, the alien said, this one's a squealer. You think he'd never seen a set of pincers before, like pincers, horrible imagery, right? So, and then he said, yeah, you should feel bad that this happened. I don't want to talk to you again. And that's it. And he ended the email in a very angry way. I kept trying to call him, email him, nothing. I haven't heard from him in 2.5 years. So, but after that phone call, I said, I think I remember I used to write a lot of poetry. And after that trip, I wrote a bunch of poems. So I went back to my collection of handwritten poems. And I found a poem that I'd written in 1977 after that road trip. And the name of the poem was "I Sold Out to the Aliens." And in that kind of silly but serious poem, at the end, it mentions pincers. So now
Wow.
I had archival, something, a historic document that I'd written after that trip that ties in what Ernie said to me in that email before he cut off communication with me. So when I saw that, my jaw dropped and I got a chill. It's like, wow, this is all, coming together. And then I talked to Yvonne. I said, it's so frustrating. Ernie won't talk to me. And she said, oh, that's normal. When two people have an experience, usually one of them will want to talk about it. The other one will deny it and go into denial and be very angry. And usually the friendship breaks up, which it did. After that road trip, Ernie and I were never the same. We were not as close anymore. And we just fallen, out since that time. And so that's a very typical experience for when you have two people with the same, contact at the same time.
That's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that someday he'll want to reconcile, and we'll talk about it together, with you guys or somebody. That would be awesome if we could do that. But you can't push a person. They're ready when they're ready.
Right.
And I just have what I have now. That's all I got.
Talking about pincers, that reminded me of the Pascagoula abduction. They had alien beings that had pincers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is confirmed by that story as well.
Yeah, and the insectoids, which that's the kind of appendages they have, and which was the experience I had in '73, which was with I call him Dr. Bug, and the way I describe him and talk about him, Terry and I both agree it must have been the same guy. It sounds like the same insectoid, the way he acted, and but that was my experience in '73, which is a very classic abduction, put on a table, the grays around me, this insectoid doctor kind of guy. And all I remember is that he told me, he said, I asked what's going on, but I felt like drugged. I felt like I couldn't move or, get too excited, but I was inside. I was, terrified. And he said, don't worry, you're going through special processing. That's what he told me. You're going through special processing. And then when I was about to freak out, he got mad at the little grays because there was some kind of device on my head that was hurting me. I complained about it, and he admonished them. He got mad at them and told them to remove it. And after that, he just touched me on the head, and next thing you know, I was back in my bed again. So that was in 1973, the special processing. So I think they've been contacting me probably since my birth, probably in one way or another. I just remember that first one in '64, and then, these other ones throughout the years. But, everybody's experience is different. But, even if you have an experience where it's a rescue or something good comes out of this, there's still the trauma of going through this procedure or having contact with that something as extraordinary as an alien being. So everybody, I think, gets traumatized. In fact, I did some research with CERO members, the Close Encounter Resource Organization, of which Yvonne Smith heads. And I got permission to survey all of the CERO members here in the United States, also in France. They have a branch there in Europe. And I asked, what I did is I took the VA's standard PTSD questionnaire survey to determine eligibility for a provisional diagnosis of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I took it and I changed it just slightly. Instead of combat experience, it was alien contact, right? So I gave this survey to all these members, and I came out with some very interesting statistics. It showed that of these CERO members, 59% would qualify through the VA for a provisional diagnosis of PTSD. That's how traumatic these things are. Even higher than the percentage for most combat veterans. So I'm not saying that they've gone through worse or whatever, but for some reason it's even higher. And this is a survey that you can't really fake it. There's certain question groups, and they cross-reference each other, and it's very hard to. In fact, I asked my friend who runs a vet center is a PTSD counselor. I said, could somebody fake their way through this thing? And he said they would have to know exactly how the questionnaire is designed, and who would do that? You know,
Right.
who would do that? He said if they would do that, they got worse problems than PTSD.
Right.
That's what he told me.
In your experiences with abductions, have you had any trace evidence left on yourself or person?
You know, other than the speech pathology, you know, other than the you know, and I did some research on that too, on trauma-induced stuttering, and you know, and the speech problems I had. And it's rare, but it is one of the causes of a sudden stuttering or speech impediment, which is, I mean, I was fine. I was speaking fine before the experience in '64, and then for 2 years after I'd been traumatized. So other than that, as far as I know, I haven't had any, you know, I might have implants, who knows? You know, I mean, all these contact I've had, there's very likely, I've never been scanned or anything. I don't have any, you know, suspicious spots. I've never been x-rayed or scanned or, you know, any of that stuff. I would like to be, because I suspect there is something somewhere, but you know, I don't know for sure. I've asked Anzar about it, and he said there is. And when I asked him where, he said, well, we'll find out. I maybe because they move. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know exactly. But so I think that would be very interesting to do that. But I haven't had any, like the classic, you know, like scoop marks and you know, that burns, radiation burns or whatever. Haven't had that as far as I know.
Tommy?
It's very interesting. I mean, have you ever reached out and taught and spoken with other abductees, other people that have had these types of experiences?
Yeah, I belong to the CERO group and Close Encounter Resource Organization. I go to their meetings. We've been doing online meetings, but before that we did in person. And I had a very interesting experience at one of the meetings, you know, because I talked to Anzar, and he's an ancient alien mystic. I told Anzar, I said, I'm going to go to a CERO meeting, and it was in Huntington Beach at a you know, at a restaurant or whatever. And I said, could you come with me? Because I want to see if anybody else can see you too. Because you're always looking for confirmation. You know, you have these fantastic, remarkable things happen, but there's always that little element of, you know, I want somebody else to see it or experience it too. So I asked him to come, and I sat through the meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, I asked everybody, I raised my hand, I said, did anybody notice anybody with me? Now, because this is a CERO group, they're not going to ask, oh, you mean like a person sitting next to you or something? You know, they knew what I meant by that. And one lady raised her hand, and she said, yeah, you mean that big native-looking dude behind you, that giant native-looking dude, you know, Native American-looking dude, which is one of the ways that he presents himself. It's kind of like almost like a Kachina doll, like a Southwest Indian Kachina doll. He has that kind of look. He can. That's one of his looks. And I said, yeah, that's him. That's Anzar. I said, that's Anzar. And her jaw dropped, right? And she said, you got to come here. So I went over there, and she took out her purse, took out her wallet and her driver's license and showed it to me. And she doesn't live there anymore, but at that time she lived on the street Via de Anzar, the way to Anzar.
Wow.
So she's the only other person that has seen him. And she was very instrumental. She wrote the foreword to the book about that experience. And she's very funny. She says, you know, very funny things. But so she is a witness to his existence, and she kind of helped me with understanding the role. You know, she's a native, whatever you call it, a shamanic practitioner in the Native American tradition. You know, she has a real connection to Pine Ridge Reservation's been there a couple times. But anyway, she told me about this integration process, you know, and she said, you're going through an integration process with this ancient alien mystic. And I said, that sounds kind of scary, you know, integration. What do you mean? So I had to ask Anzar, I asked her, and apparently it's just to make it easier for us to make these connections. I'm not going to give up who I am as an autonomous being, you know, like be possessed by him or anything. It just makes the connection point easier. And we could already connect anyway, but it just made it clearer and a better connection. kind of like getting a T1 line for your internet instead of an old baud modem or whatever. I think that's kind of what it is. That's what the integration does.
Okay, one thing I wanted to tell you is that Terry Lovelace, one of the gentlemen that we interviewed on our channel, probably about a month ago now, stated that he and another person meditated for a few minutes and tried to contact Anzar on a ghost box. And he came, a deep male voice came out on the ghost box and said, "Hi, Terry." And then it said hi to the other person and said, "You're Bruce's friend." So there's your confirmation.
There's another one. Yeah, I didn't want to say it unless Terry, I didn't know if Terry had already told you or not, but yeah, he told me that the other day, and he was asking if it was okay, or I don't know, not the other day, whenever it was. And I said, yeah, that's fine. Talk about it. It just, it adds more to the story. And I'm not this kind of person that jealously guards my connection to Anzar. He's for all of us, his message. That's what the book is about. It's a message for all of humankind. And I don't consider myself special. Like I said, that would be against my Scandinavian upbringing, where you're never supposed to make yourself out to be any better than anybody else. I just happen to be a conduit, and probably because I've been channeling and having paranormal experiences my whole life. So it's just easier for spirits to contact me. It's easier for aliens to contact me and all the other entities that some of them, kind of malevolent. So I have to be careful. But yeah, Terry told me that, and that is great. And I told him, just keep going with that. Whatever, if Anzar wants to talk to you on a regular basis, or the person he was with, I think that's great. That just gives you more opportunities to get information, rather than just me, because as you guys know, there's often stuff is lost in translation. It's so amazing that we can even make these connections. So the more people that can make the connection and bring the information down, I think the better. More the merrier, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I think that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, if I may ask the question, how or if, or has these experiences affected your personal life?
Yeah. Well, it's one thing, people will, I know that for people, there's the boggle factor that the late Jim Marrs talked about, what he called the boggle factor. It's one thing to say, people will say, yeah, I believe there's probably ghosts. We don't really know what it is, but there's probably ghosts. And, but then if you say, yeah, there's not only ghosts, but there's also aliens, then people might say, well, I don't know about that, but maybe. And then you say, well, not only are there ghosts and aliens, but also there's an ancient alien mystic named Anzar, who I speak to on a regular basis, who's giving me information about the future, what's going on right now. You've reached several boggle points there that people have to overcome. Even people that have had, very unusual experiences are going to reach a point where they just go, I got to think about that one. Right. If one of you would have come to me 10 years ago and said, I speak to an ancient alien mystic named Anzar, I'd be open-minded, and I'd say, okay, let me check it out. Let me go read some things, talk to other people, and I think that's good. That kind of natural kind of carefulness, or even if you want to call it skepticism, is probably good, because you want to reinforce it. You want to make sure you've done your research and you don't just accept things wholesale. And you got to know the person, trust the person. So all that goes through your mind. But yeah, so it's been difficult in that sense, that I know that I've gone pretty far with this, but I haven't really had any negative. I shouldn't say no negative. I've had very little negative repercussions from the book. I've had. I shared something today on Facebook, which I can share with you guys too, about something that's coming up. I shared it, and I thought it was very helpful information, and I got attacked on Facebook. People are frightened. People are frightened. I think they called me a fear monger, that it was fear mongering BS, right? So now a similar thing happened back in January of 2020, And actually, when I started to talk about this information, on a recent broadcast, it was edited out, or it was censored or whatever by YouTube. So I'm not going to exactly say what it was. But what I said, some people, and it's actually come to pass, right? But people at that point were, saying, "Oh, that's not right. This is BS. You're just making stuff up." And okay, I don't get mad about it. I'm just trying to help. I'm always just trying to help. And there's always a question: how much should I say? And I have this same dilemma when I contact people's loved ones, because I've contacted people's loved ones who tell me stuff. And I thought, man, I don't know if I should I tell the person that's still on the earth, about what their loved one said. And it's always tough so I err on the side of the deceased. If they tell me it's okay, even if it's kind of rough, I will give the information. But I've had the deceased that I've contacted as spirits that said, I'm going to tell you something, but I don't want you to tell them. Well, then you feel bad. You're kind of torn, because the person that asked you to contact them said they want to know. And then the person you contacted say, I don't want them to know. And then I figure I have to favor the deceased, and because they have more knowledge about that person than I do, obviously, what this information will mean. So when Anzar gives me predictions or prophecies or preparations, better said, I always have to weigh it. How much should I say? I don't want to make people upset. I don't want them to panic, but yet I have a responsibility to share the information. So right. You always have to weigh all that stuff. You don't want to be a sensationalist and, one of those guys with the sign, the end is near, that kind of stuff. You want to give people hope and some kind of, something they can do, constructive that they can do to forge their future and their destiny. You don't want them to abandon hope. So, right. So you have to be very, very careful.
I've heard this. Now, I'm not going to ask you to go into this necessarily, but I've heard that some of the communication between you and Anzar about the future is apocalyptic.
Well, okay. He has said that, I'll start with the positive. Ultimately, we're going to be okay, but there's going to be quite a bit of turmoil before we get there. And part of the reason for that is that he calls this a leap of consciousness. This is the nudge that we're getting. We're going to take a step in our evolution. He calls it a leap of consciousness into a new era of reconversion. Now, what he means by that is that we're going to keep our science and technology advancing, but we're also going to remember and honor what our ancient ancestors, the indigenous ancestors that we had, knew about the cosmos and their connection and the spirit connections. I mean, they lived in a very different world than they were connected to what David Bohm, the physicist, would call the implicate order, or the objective reality, the quantum reality. They were more in touch with it than we are. We've closed ourselves off to it for various reasons. So what Anzar is saying is, as we take this leap of consciousness, we're entering into this era of reconversion where we will take that ancient knowledge and mix it with our modern technology to advance as a species, as human beings. And wow. That's a scary process. It sounds great, and the end result is going to be great, I think. I'm very optimistic about that. But that's very scary for a lot of people, and people are going to fall off either way. And there's going to be a lot of conflict related to that as people, even this upcoming release of information by the government, supposedly on the 25th. Although it's been leaked already, they've been leaking it, I think, on purpose. I think the government's leaking on purpose, little bits and pieces. And a friend of mine said they're kind of taking the air out of the tires. That's what they're trying to do, so it doesn't get, people don't get too crazy. But it's going to be enough that's going to tip some people over the edge, and different types of people are just not. It's too much of a shock. It's beyond a boggle point. It's just like the existence I knew, the reality I know is not real. It's I don't know if I can handle it, and they're going to go mad. Some people are, and they're, unfortunately, when people do that, a lot of people get violent, and there's conflict that comes out of that. We don't know how foreign governments are going to react to this. The Chinese and the Russians have been very quiet about what they think about our disclosure project, that what we're doing.
Right.
There's a little bit of information from the Chinese, but very little. Only thing I heard, and it was from a Chinese news source, so it's a government source, so who knows. They said that they're taking it seriously. Nothing from the Russians that I've heard. I have to think that they're just as concerned and interested as our government is. And the unfortunate thing, like I said before, most of them are thinking this in military terms.
Right.
How can we strap a bomb to it? And Anzar has already said that's not the answer. That's not going to happen. It's an evolutionary change for human beings so that we can save ourselves, save this precious planet, which obviously they love too. Otherwise, they wouldn't be haven't spent so much time here and effort doing all the things they've been doing. And some of them have been rather rough, obviously. Some of them have been more kindly, like I think Anzar's in that group. And there's some alien entities that are kind of in between, kind of, more neutral. So there's different groups or whatever that Anzar's told me about. But so this leap of consciousness into a new era of reconversion, he said not to use the word, he said the word disclosure doesn't really capture it. Because disclosure, the way he described it to me, is an other directed process. That's where somebody discloses to you what the truth is. You wait for it. You wait for the government to tell you what the truth is. We already know what the truth is. We already know. We just want confirmation of it. We want you to admit it. That's what we want you to do. And so he calls it a revelation, which is a grassroots thing from the ground up. The people already know what the truth is. They just want confirmation. So they're going to put pressure on the governments, on their elected government. I can't speak for those that are not, that are authoritarian regimes, but they have to put pressure on them to reveal the truth. It's a revelation. That's what he calls it, a revelation. I know that I use the word disclosure in the book too, but I have that caveat, that I use it because it's common terminology, but really what Anzar says it is a revelation. And there's, of course, religious, connotations to that too.
Yeah, we've been thinking about along those lines as well. I mean, it's necessary for confirmation.
Yes.
Even though I feel also that it is not necessary because, like you said, we already know.
Yeah.
Tommy and I both know because we both had significant close-up UFO sightings of multiple. I've had multiple vehicles in plain sight. Tommy's seen something that was incredibly large. So, in my opinion, most people within the ufology community, at least, do accept the fact that UFOs are real, aliens are real. They're here. They may have been here for centuries, and we may be actually the newcomers.
Yeah, and yeah, it's amazing. So for ufologists and people in the community, it'll be nice that the government's going to have this report, but of course it's going to be redacted. And we all know what it's pretty much what it's going to say because they've leaked it on purpose. They're going to say they're not ours. We don't think they're Russian or Chinese. We don't really know what they are. Well, that kind of narrows it down to, well, if they're not human, that
right. You're running out of things it could be.
Yeah, you're running out. I mean, you could say interdimensional, whatever, and then you got to make up some fancy thing. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so I think, but that's enough to rattle enough cages that there are going to be people that are going to have a problem with it. And what Anzar's telling me now, I can tell you what he's told me recently. And he's always careful when he tells me, future stuff, because he says future stuff that I'm telling you. He said, always be careful because predictions can be wrong, but preparations are never wrong. He always reminds me, predictions can be wrong, but preparations can never be wrong. And he says that because some of the information could be lost in the translation as I'm connecting to it. Also, time is very fluid and doesn't really exist in the realm that he's in. So, it doesn't have the same markers that we have, this linear time. And the other thing is we do have an element of free will as well. So there's variables. There's a lot of variables. Something could happen at the last minute to change the course of something else. It goes off into another, what I call a fork in the road of time. Something could happen. So, but he said more likely than not, around June 30th, the end of this month, give or take a week or two, either way, there's going to be massive disruptions. That's what he said, massive disruptions. And when I asked him, and he said worldwide, not just here in the US, and I obviously wanted details. And I said, give me details. And he said, remember, some of this may happen, some may not. Be careful with predictions. So I'm always careful, but this doesn't happen very often that he tells me something like that. The last time he told me something like that, it was before COVID hit. He told me that there was going to be a series of calamities, so I believe him when he says it, and the timing can be a little off or whatever, but okay, massive disruption. So I asked him, okay, what does that mean? Sometimes he tells me words, sometimes he shows me imagery, or like a film clip, like an old, whatever you call it, a documentary or something. And what I was seeing was like, armed conflict was part of it. The disagreements with other world powers over the origins of the virus and that kind of stuff. Infrastructure problems, major infrastructure problems. Now, when he says that, I automatically think of the probing that's been going on already by the hackers. We are, and it's not a secret to say, that we have a lot of vulnerabilities when it comes to everything, whether it's our electrical grid to our GPS satellite systems to whatever we use. It's all based on what we're doing right now,
right?
Based on all this stuff working. And if you have bad actors out there, whether it's on the part of a state-sponsored operation or these people who are doing it for money, or whatever you call it, blackmailing or whatever you call that, or combination of the two. I think these have been probes to show really how weak we are, and not just us, other countries are too. And I think that's part of it as well. And then he also mentioned, and this he did mention, he said, and that's why I talked about people tipping off one way or the other. Once the report is released, there's going to be people who it's going to be very upsetting to them. And we already have people freaking out. There's a dramatic increase in the number of shootings and mass killings. And, because people, a lot of people are living on the edge, from a year and a half of lockup or whatever, or lockdown. So it doesn't take much once a person is already at that point to tip them over the edge. So, and we know the state of our politics in this country. Without getting into politics, I think everybody can agree it's very polarized. So, and it's very unhealthy for us at this point. And it makes us look weak in the eyes of those who wish us harm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So we're not together. And so all of those things are going to hit. And I don't think it'd be a surprise to anybody. So that was my kind of like preparation. He said preparations are in order, not panic, but preparations are in order. So I had to weigh, should I tell people this on a radio show, or should I say it on Facebook, or should I not say anything? And I erred on the side of safety. It's better to be safe than sorry. I'd rather people say, oh, he was a fool, he wasn't right. I'd rather have somebody say that than to say, man, I wish somebody would have, let me be a little bit more prepared, what I could do, even if it's just a small thing, like making sure you have enough medicine for the people that are chronically ill in your family, or you have a generator, or you have extra food and water, just some little thing, a first aid kit, whatever it takes, which are really standard things that everybody should have anyway, regardless of what Anzar is saying. Everybody should be better prepared. Right. So I feel like I err on that side of the equation. So that's why I'm telling you guys and your listeners, and I posted on Facebook. But like I said, on Facebook, I got attacked for that, and that's okay. If you're going to be playing with the big boys, you got to have broad shoulders. So if he's telling me this stuff, I got to be able to take any criticism, and I have, and I will, and that's fine. That's just part of the mission. So that's the way I see it.
Well, if I may, has the spirit have you ever talked about things that could be actually on the moon, or more specifically on the dark side of it? Have you ever
I haven't asked him specifically, but I can tell you this, just a blanket statement. And both my friend Gene, who is in the spirit world and is very, him and Anzar are pretty, they work together, they talk to each other. I see them together, it's pretty cool. One of the, when I first saw Gene in that vision, after he died, a month after he died, I asked the first question was, what's it like to be dead? And then he was an actor and he's a very jolly, funny guy. And he started laughing. He said, I don't feel dead. I'm talking to you, aren't I? How can I be dead? And I laughed and I said, yeah, I guess that's true. And you're just in another place. And he said, exactly. There's no future. There's no past. It's just all, everything's together. It's an eternal now. That's what he told me. And then I started asking him rapid fire questions like, okay, what do you, how about aliens? How about UFOs? How about Bigfoot? How about, I just started rattling out, it was coming like rapid fire out of my head. And he said, slow down. He said, let me just cut you off. I'll tell you, the answer is, it's all true. It's all true. And Anzar has doubled up on that, backed that up. It's all true. So I've always stuck back, gone back to that. So when people tell me their experiences, I don't doubt them that they've had those experiences. And within the quantum realm, all these things are possible. And whether it's, Bigfoot or aliens or ghosts or whatever, and I just always go back to that it's all true. And it's
that's kind of what we're trying to prove on the channel sometimes, is let people know what's out there and what people are seeing and see if they can make the decision whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, provide the information and allow our audience to actually make up their own minds.
Exactly.
And that's something that a lot of people in this field, they tend to want to skew everybody over to their way of thinking or whatever. And I think that's the wrong approach. We both think that's the wrong approach.
Right.
I totally agree with you guys. I always say I only have a little piece of the puzzle. Everybody's got a little piece of the puzzle. We can't make these walls between us where we're guarding that little piece of the puzzle like it's the whole truth, right? We only got part of it. So what we got to do is share, like on your show, the attitude you guys have, which is wonderful. We share these puzzle pieces, then we can make the bigger picture. And we can go to conferences, we can listen to shows like yours, we can talk to each other politely and not argue over, well, I think this is this kind of alien from Andromeda, or this is this. So, it doesn't ultimately doesn't matter. They're here. We know there's different types. We don't know the full, everything about it, but we will learn, and let's learn together and figure it out. And I like that open-minded approach. I look that way at where I teach at the college. We have psychologists, we have historians, we got political scientists. I always thought those are artificial barriers between people in academia. Our job should be to share information. So I try to break down those barriers as much as I can and work with other colleagues. Sure. And whether they're psychologists or and since I've come out with my paranormal life, I've had other faculty members come up to me who wouldn't have talked about this stuff at all. Now they feel I'm safe to talk to. So because they know that I'm not going to think they're crazy. So they'll come up and say, you know what? And they'll tell me, whatever their experience was. And I go, that's really cool. And I might have some thoughts about it. And I even had them take the class, the paranormal class that I offer.
Outstanding.
So that's, I think what you guys are doing is wonderful, and we need each other.
Right.
We desperately need each other in this evolutionary step. It's not an individual thing. It is, a revelation from your individual standpoint, but we're taking the step together. We're taking this leap together.
Sure.
And
that's what we're trying to get out there, is that we're a community. We're not individuals. And that's why we collaborate with as many people as we can, small or large. And we make sure that the conversation proceeds. Right, Tommy?
That's right. And I agree with you. It's a very hard thing to talk about with people. At least it was until maybe a few months ago, because people would come up to me and ask me, I hear you're on the UFO channel. I'm like, yeah, and I really tend to downplay it because I didn't want the ridicule. I didn't want to have to deal with that. But now just within the last couple of months. It's, yeah, I'm a co-host of a UFO channel, and this is what we think it is, and those kinds of things. And I think we can be a lot more open and honest in this conversation. It's a conversation that probably should have happened decades ago.
I think you're right. We've wasted a lot of time. And, part of that is probably our government's responsibility, but it's really our responsibility too. Because in the book, I have a chapter called, I call it full disclosure. And I'm talking about, it's not just the government's responsibility. We have to tell people what our experiences are. And so many people, I was guilty as anybody else until 2016. I didn't tell anybody what had happened to me. I should have told people a long time ago, but I wasn't ready. But now I think we should be ready, and we shouldn't have anything to fear. I didn't lose my job. I can't say it'll happen for everybody. If you have a security clearance, maybe, you got to be careful, right? But, as far as I thought I was pretty vulnerable as an academic. I thought I would be driven out of the college, but nothing could be further from the truth. People want to hear these stories, and they want to, when they come to my paranormal class, the main reason they come there is not to hear me lecture about the paranormal or aliens or UFOs or what my theories are or whatever. They come there because they want to be believed and they want to be heard. And they can't do it at work. And sometimes they can't do it with their own spouse or their family or their friends. But this one place they can come to and be safe and talk to people and be accepted. And that's what I provide in the classroom. So half of the class time is people telling what's happened to them in their life. And it's incredibly, like you said, the UFO videos you get from everyday people, that is the grassroots of the movement of the wanting to take this leap of consciousness.
Well, one of the things that Tim and I have discussed in the past is that now that the stigma is being lifted off this subject and we're able to communicate about it more freely and openly, I wonder how many stories are out there that we've never heard because of the stigma. How many videos have never been submitted because of the stigma? And that's unfortunate.
Oh, you're right. It's just the tip of the iceberg, right? At first, it was just a few brave individuals, and it was more people and more, and now it's gotten to be a lot. But it's still just the tip of the iceberg. Dean Radin, the chief scientist at IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, that was founded by astronaut Edgar Mitchell in Petaluma, California. He did a survey of scientists and engineers, and he found that 85% of them have had a paranormal or alien UFO experience, but very few of them talk about it. But 85% of them have had an experience. If that translates to the general population, which it may be, I don't know if, how you would figure that. Think about it. Think, 85% of 330 million people. It's mind blowing when you think about it, and the power of that, the grassroots power of that. If all these people came forward and said, come on, we already know what the truth is. It's happened to us. Let's figure it out together. Think of the power of that. I think that's where this leap of consciousness is going to come from, is from the grassroots, from we, the people, us as people will push it forward. And I don't mean violently. I mean, in a peaceful way, but the power of that, like I said, that's a lot of people.
That's kind of like leveraging our ascension. Yeah,
exactly. You got that many people, I always use that, when I talk about, I'm a historian, so I talk about the Kennedy assassination, and, about 70% of the Americans polled say they don't believe the government story. To this day, so about 70%, maybe a little less now, maybe 68%, but it's always been pretty steady. 70% of the American people can't be insane,
Right, or stupid. And that's what it really comes down to, because the government coming out and with some of the wild and outlandish excuses about how they're dismissing this sighting or that sighting, or this is swamp gas, or this is, and it's like, look, we're educated, logical, rational human beings here. And, we have the ability to, to figure out that this is something abnormal. Why don't you be honest with us and try to figure out why that abnormal thing is there? Tell us what that is. Tell us what you know. And they never do that. And they've intimidated people, and they've ruined people's lives and careers and things like that, just to keep a lid on this. So, again, the stigma is starting to dissipate from this subject. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then we think of our friend Terry Lovelace, what the military did to him after his dual experience with him and his friend, how they threatened him afterwards. Right. The intelligence folks, saying you were not going to talk about this. And he was traumatized anyway on top of that. And, had whatever radiation burns and all that stuff, an implant, as it turned out. And he wasn't allowed to talk about it. And he didn't talk about it till later in his life. And when he did, and he came out with his book, there were people coming out of the woodwork, including mysterious, are they government people? Are they not, coming out? They're very interested in what he's saying and how he's saying it. They wouldn't show that interest unless they knew, I mean, they know, but they're afraid. I think I saw a comment from one of your listeners. There's a lot of fear driving this. We don't know what to do with it. What if our adversaries get a hold of this technology, and so Anzar's told me that is not going to happen. It's for everybody, regardless of who they are, where they are.
I saw an interview just yesterday where they said they're pushing the foreign adversarial rhetoric.
Yeah.
Meaning that they're coming right out and saying that the UFOs or UAPs that have been filmed and released recently by the likes of George Knapp, Lou Elizondo, and Jeremy Corbell are actually a pressing threat to national security. And that's how they're taking it. And Tommy and I were doing a live stream the other day, and we were talking about Project Sign. And Project Sign estimation of the situation in 1949 is the exact same stance that they're taking now. Yeah. They want it to be a military threat so they can get more funding, more money to defend against an existential threat that may or may not even exist.
Yeah.
Why change a playbook that's worked for you for decades? I mean, just dust it off and use it again. And I'm afraid that that's what they're doing at this point. And it looks to me from my sources that they're trying to slight this as, okay, well, this may be someone else's like an adversarial technology. And, my response to that is, look, if our adversaries had this type of technology, if they were able to create these types of power sources and things like that, we would be seeing this in their economic sector big time. I mean, they would take over the world economy in a matter of a very short time.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing that. Plus, if you look at like the stealth bomber, the B-2, the Spirit, as expensive as that thing is, as complex as that thing is, and we were supposed to buy like 150 of them, something along those lines. We ended up getting 20. Why? Because the expense that goes into it, because of the labor, all the science and everything else. So my point, I said all that to say this, is that if it is Russia or China, then they've had this technology for decades, and somehow they've been able to create multiple different makes, multiple different models, and fleets of these things. And I'm just not going for it.
I'm not either.
I don't either. No. I agree with you.
Congressman Burchett came out on the news the other day and said it's utterly ridiculous if people consider Russia or China or any other foreign adversarial power to have anything like what was released publicly by George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, and others. So, in fact, I put up an interview on our channel today about Ralph Blumenthal coming out and saying that the New York Times is actually leaning in the direction of an extraterrestrial origin because nothing else adds up according to the data.
Exactly. Yeah. And unless you want to push the threat scenario, I guess you could still push the threat scenario with the ETs as the threat. I suppose you could look at it that way. And that's like the old, we're back to the 1950s horror movies, where the first thing we do is bring in the tanks and start blasting away at the UFOs or whatever.
Right. The day the earth stood still.
And that's just not going to work. That's not, it's obviously not going to work. But, so another thing that Anzar has shown me is I was very interested in how, these UFOs, how the UAPs work. And he allowed me to, I had like a spirit journey inside of one. And this is wild. I wrote about this and I shared it with other CERO members. And what happened is that I was on a military base, and this is like a dream vision or whatever. And I was on a military base. A military officer, looked like an American military officer, came up. He had some kind of thing that looked like a graphite rod. He took me to this circular, ship, and there was a like a receptacle in the middle of it, and he put that in there, and all of a sudden the thing comes to, things start happening. And he looked at me and he said what, from the Frankenstein movie, he was making fun of the Frankenstein. He said, "It's alive." That's what he said. It's alive. And what happened was I was able to be inside of it. And when you go inside of it, it looks like solid, a fuselage, right? But all of a sudden it turns transparent. And then it was moving, and it was moving at this incredible rate of speed. And we were going right past people and cars and other stuff, and nobody saw us. They didn't see us at all. It's like what I would call maybe an interdimensional vortex. The thing had created something that nobody could see, but we could see out through whatever this material was. And it was absolutely amazing, the maneuverability and everything. And because I've been pressing Anzar, please let me know how this stuff works. So then he has me in this, this dream vision of how it works. And it was so awesome. I mean, I was a pilot in the Army. I flew helicopters. And as exciting as that was, this is way beyond any of that. I mean, it was so cool. And it would also explain how sometimes they can be seen, other times they can't be seen, depending on if they want to be seen. That's the thing. Or maybe they're in between, they have to come into this, material dimension for some reason, then they pop back out. But I think that's kind of how he explained it to me in this dream vision. So I just love this stuff, and I love hearing people's stories. And like I said, everybody's got a little piece of the puzzle.
I was going to ask you this. Has Anzar ever relayed to you whether multiple vehicles are cloaked or uncloaked, mainly cloaked in our airspace at all times?
Well, he gave me this dream vision, which would indicate that they can do, whatever they want to do. They can be seen, not be seen. They could be seen as anything you want them to be, up to the person, what they need to see at the time, or what they don't want us to see. Mm-hmm. So I think they have that, whatever you call it, transmutability, to not only dimensionally, but also physically how they appear. And I think, the Anzar himself has that transmutability. So that's pretty cool. He can appear as whatever you want him to appear as he said to me once, depict me as you wish. That's what he told me once. And I think it's the same way with whatever, the vehicles or the, I don't even think it's a vehicle is the proper term. I call it an interdimensional vortex, that it's some kind of I think the clue was from the Frankenstein movie. It's alive. It's more alive than a nuts and bolts kind of thing, and it's integrated with the user. So that's the advancement level we're talking about. And I know we have elements of that, rudimentary elements like the like in the AH-64 Apache, they got the little receptacle thing for the eye, the look down, shoot down stuff. You see all the instrumentation within your goggles or whatever. They got some of that stuff, but that's very rudimentary compared to an organic device or vortex where you can actually travel, through the air into space, underwater, which apparently all these things can do based on the reports that people have given. So yeah, I would say that he's given me enough clues about that. The problem when I do these spirit walks is that I have so many questions, and there's just, I can't always be on a spirit walk. But I do, if people ask me questions and they say, can you ask Anzar this particular thing, I will ask it and he will give me an answer. unfortunately, sometimes the answers beg more questions. That's the problem.
Right.
We actually have a question from the chat room from Terry Lovelace.
Ah.
He's asking, are the ships alive, run by sentient AI maybe? What are your thoughts on that?
It could very well be, because I think that some of these so-called aliens that we see don't seem like they're totally organic. That they might be, some kind of replicants or some kind of sentient AI. That they're machines of some sort. And and they're directed kind of like by a hive mind, thing. Maybe by the taller grays or the insectoids or whatever but it seemed to me like my experience was the insectoid himself wasn't in charge. He was obviously the doctor. He was the skilled person that was working with me. And the little grays were just kind of like workers, and that, I think Terry's told me that too. He got the same impression. They were like workers being directed by them, and they were admonished too in my case, because they put some device on my head that wasn't appropriate and was hurting me. And I think, Terry's right. I think that's probably, there could be, that might be what's driving it. Maybe it doesn't need anything physically inside to drive it. I don't know, or some combination. I just know that in my dream vision, I was inside of the thing, and it was completely awesome. I mean, I can't even, it's almost beyond description. And I'm a writer, so I try to be able to describe things, and it's almost hard to describe that experience.
Yeah, Bob Lazar mentioned something like that as well. With his story, he said that once he'd gained access to the upper floors or one of the floors of one of these craft, he said it was very ominous inside, like he felt like he wasn't supposed to be there, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think sometimes things are so hard for us to comprehend because we have to have a way to describe it. And usually we define by opposites, and so sometimes it's beyond our vocabulary, or it's beyond our ability to perceive, because we're used to our interface. The interface we have in this dimension is how we, interact with the implicate order, with the objective reality, the quantum reality. So when we no longer have use of our interface, we become kind of lost, not to be funny, but lost in space. I mean, it's kind of like we have trouble with our bearings of what's up and down and real and not real. And it can become very confusing in a hurry. So
hey, Bruce, do you consider the fact that maybe they actually knew in advance, several decades, in regards to living ships? Because I know for a fact that there have come out media productions or television shows where they've had living ships, like Farscape. And it was a living ship, and it was run by a being that was connected to the actual craft, and the craft was alive. So it almost insinuates that what you're saying is fact, but they knew it ahead of time. Yeah.
Well, I think these things are, uploaded, downloaded, whatever you want to say. And, creative minds, like I'm a writer. And I write plays, fictional plays, historical fiction, but anyway, fictional plays. And if you were to ask me, where do you get the ideas? Well, a lot of people say my muse, I don't pick what I'm going to write about. All of a sudden, something comes down to me, is downloaded to me, and I have to write. I'm compelled to write about it and put it, use all the talents that I have and craft that I have to do it. I think the same thing could happen with technology as well. And for science fiction writers or the screenwriters or whatever, they're drawing from that implicate order, from that quantum realm, that alien realm, that spirit realm. They're drawing from that. They might not even know that they're doing it. It's the creative process. Once you open yourself up to that and you get into the groove, that's how that stuff can come out. So I don't even think it might not even be conscious that they're doing that's where they're drawing from in it. And it's not surprising based on the creative process that I've seen and working with other creative people. It's pretty amazing how that process works.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but like I said, that's kind of like confirmation of what Anzar told you.
Yeah.
And what we already know as a group in the ufology community concerning living ships.
Yeah.
I do know that another major ufologist stated that the ships sometimes come into being like they just pop into our dimension. They just and they're there. And that's why a lot of the observations about like the sports model that Bob Lazar worked on, he said that a lot of the vehicles that he looked at were identical. Like they were popped out of a mold, just sucked out of the etheric realm. And so I'm wondering if, because of that, maybe the etheric realm is creating these craft, and that's why we don't always see nuts and bolts. Like we see what, like we refer to, with like flying saucers and such.
Yeah, I think well, Anzar has told me before that that we will show you what you need to see. That will give a reference point for you. So that's why ancient people or old, people from the 1800s or 1700s that had these experiences, they thought they saw sailing ships. That made sense to them. It made sense to them. Or in Ezekiel, some giant wheel, with fire or whatever, all this stuff around it. I mean, that's what made sense to them. So we use what makes sense to us, and that's what they're going to show us because they know that's a reference point for us. And these things are transmutable. They can change form and stuff. So I think that they want us to understand, but they don't want to totally blow our minds or overwhelm us too much. And I think that's been, who was it? Was it John Mack, that famous person? Famous doctor from Harvard who helped abductees. He, I think one of his patients said the alien told him that, I think it was John Mack that reported this in his book, unless I'm mistaken, said that they want us, the aliens want us to believe in them, but not too much, which I think is an important point. And because we have to have a reference point, in our everyday lives. I find that to be true. I've had this paranormal life, but I've also had to lead my regular, life, my gig during the day. My wife is not into ufology. She's not into the paranormal. She's very accepting and very supportive of me, but she helps keep me grounded. So I can't think about it 24/7. Sometimes I'd like to, but I got to sleep at night. I got to do my chores. I got to do my work. I got to do other stuff. So I have to compartmentalize it, and that's how you can balance it. And I know with psychics, that's really, really important. It's more important to know how to turn it off than how to turn it on.
Right.
And I think it's the same with, the sightings and, alien stuff and UFO stuff. You have to know how to turn it off as well. And otherwise you could slip into madness, I would think.
Sure.
And some people probably do.
I've found that with the information I've gotten in regards to UFOs and the UFO sightings I've had, I've experienced more a sense of excitement, wonderment. I have not been scared or traumatized. Now, I've had trace evidence on my person, and I've even had an implant behind my ear, according to a doctor. So but I don't have any waking memories of any abductions. So I can't say for sure if I would be traumatized or not because I don't have any memory.
Right. Yeah. And
Tommy?
So have you ever done a hypnotic regression?
Not yet.
Yeah. I'd say I didn't want to do it, but Terry actually told me about Yvonne. And so I figured, okay, I'll give it a try. Now I'm a guy that I don't want to give my power to anybody. And I always thought a hypnotist was somebody who took your power away from you. like a stage hypnosis where they make you act like a chicken or whatever. I didn't want to be humiliated, but I was way off because I was in control the whole time. I was just very relaxed with a very experienced person who was not asking leading questions, but was very skilled. I mean, she's been doing it for 30 years. So it was able to fill in some gaps of my conscious memories, my retrieved subconscious, and to put that together into a more complete picture. So I'd recommend it. I guess it might not be for everybody. And I thought I would be the most resistant person to it, but even I benefited quite a bit from it.
Okay, I might look into that. Tommy?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I think it's been a great talk. We really appreciate you coming, Bruce. What a fantastic story you have to tell, or several of them, actually. I want to thank the audience for coming out, folks. Really, again, we do this for you folks, and we really appreciate the support. We're looking for the report to drop, folks, and as soon as that does, again, we're going to go ahead and go live like immediately, as soon as we can get our hands on that thing, and we'll go over it together. In my opinion, I think, as I've said before, that we're looking at an ideological battle going on within the United States government, specifically the Pentagon right now, and that you've got factions that want to go ahead and make this information public, and you've got factions that absolutely want to keep it under wraps. So in my humble opinion, as a ufologist, I think that when we get this report, we're going to learn who won that ideological battle. Okay.
Yeah. Military has a big influence on this report as well.
Sure.
They're trying to keep it under wraps, because if they come out and say, oh yeah, these things are flying in our airspace with impunity, they're brazenly violating restricted airspace, like they know what that is. They're going to look inept. They're going to look stupid because they're unable to patrol and protect the American people from a foreign adversary, whether it be from Earth or off-world.
And they've lied to the American people in the world for decades. Bald-faced lied, period.
Right, bald-faced lying for over 70, 71, 72 years.
Yeah.
Pretty deep hole to dig yourself out of, really.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree with you guys.
Bruce, any last comments?
I'll just say what Anzar always tells me. Besides, keep love in your heart and operate from a position of love, he always tells me, be the light. And I did some research on that, and I found out our DNA emits light. So we are really light creatures. So when he says be the light, he really means it. And I think that light also has the idea of illumination for the truth. So I'll just leave it at that.
Well, thank you very much for being here, Bruce. We really appreciate your time. Everybody in the chat room, we want to thank you for coming this evening. We really appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you next week. We'll have a normal live stream next week on Saturday, the 27th. And we're going to be having a special guest by the name of Sherry from Paranormal World Investigations. So come by and see us. Also, we want to thank the people participating online. Thank you for your attendance this evening. And as always, from Tommy and myself, and from Dr. Bruce Olav Solheim,